The first night, the monitors sang to each other in uneven tones that drilled into the soft part of me. Pico lights did that tired flicker, half burn, half hum, while nurses glided past in clogs like they were made of air. I sat on a plastic chair and watched my daughter's chest rise, not trusting anything that moved on its own. She was 8 and small under a mountain of hospital blankets, cheeks still somehow pink even with all those lines taped to her skin. My phone vibrated on silent across my thigh. Mom, 6 missed calls. A text from Paige, my sister. Call Mom, she needs you right now. That capital letters jig that meant trouble had already come and needed paying for. I stepped into the hallway where it smelled like saline and latex, and the leftover coffee that never went away. The janitor's cart squeaked. The vending machine sighed. I pressed call, and Mom answered on the first ring with a kind of ragged breath that sounded like a performance even as I hated myself for thinking it. It's the copay for tomorrow, she said. They won't infuse me if I don't pay. They said that's policy now. It's $1,600, baby. I thought I had it, I swear. Nurses laughed softly at a joke further down the corridor. My fingers answered before my mouth did. I moved money I didn't have. USA to Mom. Note on the transfer like I always typed so I wouldn't lose track. Mom, chemo July.
Done, I said.
You're an angel, she said.
She always said that.
Even that night, with my daughter breathing machine air and the whole world balancing on a beeping line, I swallowed the heat and said okay. I didn't know then that somewhere far from the beep and cling of 4 poles, the ocean was lifting and lowering beneath the ship deck, and Neapolitan ice cream was set out in tubs for midnight dessert. I didn't know about anchor emojis and itinerary emails and the way my sister leaned into sunlight and made a moment look like a reason. I just knew how to hit send. Before we broke, my life was small and fine. Rochester isn't a small town, not really, but mine felt bite-sized. There's a place on East Avenue that sells bagels exactly right, and if you time it just so, you can park right outside and be back in your car before the lights change. There's Strong Hospital, sprawling and gray and practical. There's the Lilac Festival in May, when the air smells like someone baked sugar into it. In my head, we were held together by routines, school days, early dinners, bills you pay on the first and feel responsible about. I was 33 when it started. My daughter, June, had a posture like a sunflower, always slightly turned toward whatever felt warm. We lived in a narrow duplex with heat that clinked when the baseboards decided to get involved. The backyard was a rectangle of patchy grass and a stubborn hydrangea that came back every year like perseverance. I worked as a school counselor at Walnut Hill Elementary, which is the sort of job where you learn to talk with your hands open and keep a box of granola bars in your bottom drawer because hunger undercuts every problem. Evan and I split when June was 5. He's not a villain. He's a guy who realized more about himself late and did it clumsily. 2 bedrooms across town with a fish tank that made June giggle. We had a schedule. He texted when he was running late with little fish emojis, which was his language for nothing is an emergency. My mom, Caroline, never Carol, always Caroline, lived in a 1-bedroom apartment over by the old Kodak campus. She had this way of entering a room like she'd already been applauded. She did her hair every day, even if no one was going to see it but the cashier at Wegmans. She grew up with not much and married my dad because he could build things and because he called her darlin', and because back then she wanted someone to tell her the ending. He died when I was 16 and Paige was 13, a snowstorm, a guardrail, the longest night of my life, and nothing about us was ever less complicated. Paige was the golden one, not just because Mom made her into it. She really was sunny, if sunshine were impatient, and a little mean when it was bored. Paige could talk her way into, or out of anything. In my mother's living room, her laughter was the gauge we all checked to figure out what version of the moment we were in. Mom had a few health scares over the years, blood pressure, aching joints that ached louder if she'd been told no about something. She didn't have savings, she had someone to call. She wasn't good at bad days. She believed in the power of a new blouse and a story. She believed in errands as a form of redemption. On June's 8th birthday, before any of it, we did sheet cake at the park, frosting printed with a unicorn so bright it felt like an announcement. Mom wore white jeans and said it made her feel young. She wiped pink icing off June's chin with her thumb. Paige arrived late because her life was a sequence of small, stylish fires. She took a selfie with Mom, captioned it Queen, always in my corner. Come night, I turned the cake into individual snack baggies, bagged the extra napkins for school, wiped off the folding table, made sure the end of day didn't look like a mess. June's first flare started as something so small I told myself it would be gone in the morning. Her calves hurt. She stopped running during recess and sat with Ms. Alvarez and colored instead. The first doctor said growing pains. The second said to watch it. The third sent us to Strong, down corridors where everything smelled washed and someone out of view was laughing too loudly because they were scared. Juvenile dermatomyositis wasn't in my vocabulary until it was in hers. Our new words were steroids and IVIG, rash over her knuckles like little heliotrope flags, creatine kinase, immunoglobulin. They admitted us. June was brave, even when she wasn't. She held onto my thumb like it held somebody's password. I watched nurses tape lines, clean ports, smile with that controlled kindness that felt like a steady hand on my back. Mom, June said once, staring at the tough tape where the 4 went in, is this forever? We treat it and we hope, Dr. Myers said before I could answer. Soft voice, no false wraps around the edges. Bodies settle. We'll keep an eye. The same week we learned the word infusion, Mom called me while I was helping June brush toothpaste off her pajama shirt. It's my ovaries, she said, low like we were hiding in a grocery aisle. I'm in menopause. Oh, don't make that face, please, but they found something. A mass? I have an appointment with oncology on Monday. Something dropped inside me. There's no good word for the thing that drops. It's not heart. It's not stomach. It's the part of your body that plans tomorrow. I'll come with you, I said. I want Paige, she said. You're too, she hesitated. You take everything personally. I can take a day off, I said. I should be there. Sweetheart, she said, you have enough on your plate with June. Let me protect my girls. She hung up before I could argue. Later, I sat on the floor of my kitchen with paperwork spread like dinner. My hand hovered over text to Paige, then dropped. I remembered all the times I'd stood in a doorway with groceries while Mom entertained someone with a story I wasn't inside. Mom's oncologist was Dr. Somebody, always said like it was a cross between an actual man and her own resilience. Paige texted a photo that Monday of the two of them with takeaway coffees and matching scarves. On my lunch break at Walnut Hill, I sat with Tasha outside, the cold gnawing my fingers, looking through my phone at that photo and feeling something like grief but meaner. You okay? Tasha asked. My mom, I said. It might be something. Hiring, she said instantly. Which is Tasha's way of saying, do you need the day off? She offers compromises like snacks. I shook my head and helped a third grader decode a fight about whose pencil was whose. It felt good to solve a problem where everyone agreed what the problem was. That winter, Mom said chemo started. It wasn't the kind that made your hair fall out, she swore. Just a light dose, low-dose chemo, she said, tapping her temple. For folks like me who don't need the whole shebang. She said words like port and infusion and made faces when she said anti-nausea meds that made it sound like she was paying rent in discomfort. How can I help? I asked. I was already juggling June's infusions, scaling my work hours back when I could and filling gaps with late-night emails about school crisis plans. But there's only one answer when your mother says she needs something and you're conditioned to deliver. It's $400 they're saying is coinsurance, she said, mocking the word like it had offended her. Just for this week. I'll pay you back when the disability kicks in. The first transfer I labeled Mom Chemo October. Then Mom Chemo November. It is remarkable how fast a new routine becomes normal when it arrives on a weekly schedule and sounds like survival. Paige organized cheer days, things like small brunches where everyone wore Gail's silly hats and stuck their tongues out. She posted photos with captions like, "Keep making me proud." I paid rent and co-pays and a new water filter because Mom said tap water was making her sick. My salary was small, steady, stretched. Evan sent me an extra $200 that month and said, I can help a bit. Because I've got it. I said, and I did, until I didn't. Pressure arrived the way weather does. First a shift in the air. Then wind you could mistake for a coincidence. Then a storm. Assistant principals started calling me into meetings with agendas labeled caseload review. What they meant was, how much more can we put on you? June's labs rose and fell like a mood. My apartment developed a draft no towel could plug. Mom's requests picked up speed. 20 here, 50 there, it's just these little nickel and dime things, she said, laughing like that made it less heavy. I've got this med that lets me keep food down. The cheap one makes me loopy. The good one is, well, we know how this goes. How much? I asked. 200, she said, then low, and 50. Sometimes she cried before she asked. Not tears, really. That breath that sounds like crying, but doesn't produce any water. Short little breakings that make you feel like a monster for doing math in your head. I started keeping a ledger. Not because I planned to throw it in anyone's face, but because there were nights I was so tired I couldn't tell what I'd done and what I still needed to do. I circled totals and put little notations next to them like I work in a magic shop. Mom chemo December. Mom rent help January, mom car insurance February. Mom electric, they cut it off once, and I paid the reconnection fee while a man with a van flicked a switch and whistled like these things just happen. Paige kept up the cheer. She's brave, she texted. Yesterday she made meatloaf and it was awful but also heroic. If a grown woman can push the same rock up the same hill every day and call it something else every time, that was me. We'd leave Strong Memorial with a new month of meds and handouts about side effects. I'd go to Mom's and drop off a pharmacy bag. I'd go home and pay a bill with a little memo line, the only place I whispered my uncertainty where no one could correct me. There were good days in there, too. Nights when June fell asleep on my legs while we watched a movie I'd already tired of, the weight of her pinning me to the couch in a way that felt like safety. I took her to the Rochester Public Market one Saturday, and she ate a donut the size of her face and licked sugar off her wrist like it was a plan. We made best of lists in the car. Best street name, June liked Troop. Best cheese, the fancy one with the crystals, she said, which is my daughter's entire personality. But then came the letter. Dear Ms. Collins, welcome to Care Advance Patient Finance. It congratulated me on my smart choice, as if assuming debt could be spun into a life hack. I hadn't signed up for Care Advance. In small gray print at the bottom, it listed the provider. Rochester Oncology Center. Line of credit, $5,000, approved. I stood in my kitchen with it, the smell of last night's popcorn everywhere like a cheap candle. June hummed something out of a cartoon from the living room, legs kicking the air. My stomach did that slow burn that means your life is about to tilt, and you're still trying to decide whether to grab the counter, or say you like being dizzy. Mom's voicemail that day was breathy and triumphant. We did it, she said. They worked with me. It's this care thing, like a credit, and they said you as the sponsor. It's just a signature. Baby, I know you would want me to have what I need. I called her back. You opened a line of credit in my name. I signed your name, she said, as if the difference would make me laugh. You forged my signature. Forged, she repeated. What is this, a crime show?
Don't be dramatic.
They needed something, and you're my something. Paige called 10 minutes later. It's not that serious, she said. She was in pain. It's federal, I said. It's a federal thing. And it's my credit. God, you always make everything about rules, she said, then softer. Sorry. But it helped. It did. I sat in the parking lot at Wegmans staring at my own face in the rearview mirror until a minivan pulled in close enough to make me adjust. In the produce section later, I forgot I went there for bananas and came home with cilantro and 3 lemons I didn't need. I put a fraud alert on my credit, called the number on the Care Advance letter, and said the words I needed to say in the flat tone that makes people on the other end follow procedure. Mom's apartment was 2 miles away. I drove there in secondhand adrenaline. She had on lipstick, like she always does when trouble is about to walk in because she knows how to dance with it. On the coffee table, A brochure with a turquoise ocean so aggressive it looked fake, the kind of blue that felt like a dare. "What's that?" I asked. She flicked it closed with a sigh like I'd spoiled something.
"Paige brought it," she said.
"We were just looking at cruises." "I'm dying," she said quietly, eyes fixed on me like the pendulum in an old clock. "Can I not look at water?" "You said stage 2, I said. "Does Dr. Myers not think water is, what, contraindicated?" She laughed. "Look at you with the big words. God, you, and your sister. Such different kinds of bosses. It's exhausting." "Mom," I said. "Don't open accounts in my name. Don't sign my name. Please. I raised you." "I know," I said. "I know." I left holding a calm I didn't feel in my teeth. In the car, I did that thing where you bang both palms against the steering wheel, except I didn't make a sound, and that felt worse. The next months were a blur of overlapping emergencies. June relapsed. She'd been on low-dose steroids, our new normal, then her labs spiked like she'd run up a hill while we were sleeping. Our assessments, the kind voice of a resident who kept looking at June's hands like they were telling her secrets. "Bodies are tricksters sometimes," she said when June cried because she didn't want another poke. "But so are we. We'll keep trying." I set up a spreadsheet for Mom's bills. I called it Mom Real. I told myself I'd stop paying without receipts. I asked her for itemized statements. "I lost them," she said. I went to her apartment to help her find them. She had exactly one drawer for official papers, and everything inside it looked like it had been rifled through by a raccoon. "Remember when you used to call me your little secretary?" I said, smiling to soften the point. "You used to wear that purple top with the little collar," she said. "It made you look smart." "I was smart," I said, and it hit me too late how that sounded. "You were bossy," she said, and she smiled in that way that's supposed to sting and end the conversation. The calls became twice a day. If I didn't pick up, she left voicemails in a tone like someone had told her if she sounded sufficiently broken, an old man in a bank somewhere would write her story in numbers. "I need $800 by tomorrow," she said one Tuesday. "They're switching me to a new med, and it's $1,200, but I have $400 from the secret stash." "You have a secret stash?" I said. She laughed, and it sounded like a door closing. "I'll bring you dinner," I said. "I'll bring you soup." "What am I, 90? She said, and she hung up. I hit $40,000 by spring. It was a number on a page at first, then a number in my chest. Evan called me at odd hours and said, "What do you need?" Like he was trying to rewrite history with a better question. I said, "I just need this day to be over." At Walnut Hill, I led a grief group for third graders who'd lost grandparents and pets and one, a father. I watched their small faces reshuffle when we named how the air changes when people go. There was a boy with hair like a dandelion who said, "Adults always smell like coffee when they are trying to be brave." I wanted to hug him and marry him to the world, so it couldn't drop him. Then came the morning I think of as the point where the fabric finally tore. June had an infusion scheduled at 8. We needed to be at the hospital by 7:30. Her backpack had a plush sloth clipped to it that she squeezed like a stress ball when she was trying to pretend she wasn't thinking. I had a sub at school. Tasha had set out my grief group toolkit with Post-its and coloring sheets, and a bowl of those weird individually wrapped mochi things I liked because they made your teeth feel like they had a secret. At 6, Mom called. "They made a mistake on the last bill," she said. "They're saying I owe $7,800. It's because we switched drugs. You know how this is. It's like they find a way to charge you for breathing. If I don't pay, they'll send it to collections, and then when I die you'll be liable." "That's not how it works," I said. "Mom, that's not how it works." "Don't argue legal with me," she said like I had grown a second head. "I talked to a lady. She said it follows the family." "Debt doesn't follow the family," I said. "Your estate pays your debts. If there is no estate, it doesn't follow the family." "You think you're better than me," she said. Her voice went flat and mean. "You always did." "I think you're scared," I said. "So are you," she said, and she hung up. I stood in the kitchen with my keys in my hand and did the math. $7,800 plus the rest of my life, give or take. I could empty what I'd been pretending was an emergency fund, sell the secondhand sofa on Marketplace, ditch cable, live in a tighter circle of light. Or I could tell her no. My mouth rebelled against no. My fingers did the transfer. I wrote in the memo, Mom, med emergency. In the car on the way to Strong, June turned the radio to a pop station I hate and sang like she was paid for enthusiasm. At a stoplight, my phone lit with a picture notification. Page on a deck. Ocean like a book cover behind her. A caption with 3 anchor emojis and a line of text that said, Sunrise with Queen. Day 3. I felt my own face change. June pressed her sloth to my forearm. You okay? She said, because my kid is a sponge and because kids know our tells better than we do. Of course, I said, and I changed the station and pointed at the sky. The breaking point was quiet. I think I expected it to be a scream. Instead, it was a printed page and a blue pen. I called Aunt Linda, Mom's older sister, because she's the only other person who knows what our version of sugarcoating tastes like. Aunt Linda's voice has a different cadence, less theater. She smokes and goes to water aerobics and wears her hair in a choppy cut that looks like freedom on good days. Did your mother ever actually say the word cancer to you? She asked. She said oncologist. She said chemo. She said drugs with names that I can't spell. Your mother learned a long time ago that people stop asking questions if you look a little exhausted and you say a word they respect, she said. When your uncle left, she walked around with sunglasses on inside and a scarf, and if anyone asked, she said migraine like it was something she'd earned. So you think? I think she's always had trouble with reality when reality refuses to be charmed. Did I ever tell you about when she took the life insurance money and went down to Florida? No, I said, and silence hung. She said she was going to clear her head and be near the water, Aunt Linda said. She came back with a tan and a ring nobody saw again. Your daddy had that 30 years of payments for $10 policy, not the big one, but it wasn't nothing. I printed Mom's bank statements the next night when June fell asleep early and the apartment sounded like it was breathing. Mom had access to my Apple family account not because I'd ever decided that was smart, but because it had happened at some point when we shared a Netflix that turned into a little knot of passwords we never untangled. Her email was signed into my old laptop. The cursor hovered like a question mark. There they were. Not all, not enough to make me feel like a detective, but enough. A confirmation from Emerald Seas Cruises for payment on balance. No mention of for someone else. A cleared charge from Shore Excursions Unlimited. A booking with a company whose name sounded like a joke someone with a brochure at a folding table would make. PDF attachments with cabin numbers and check-in window reminders. Itineraries that aligned with dates when Mom told me she'd be off-grid for treatment. 5-night Bahama. 7-night Caribbean. A 3-day that looked like a test run. I cross-checked those dates with my ledger. On the day she texted she was nauseous and too weak for phone calls, she was scheduled for snorkeling. On the day I paid $1,600 for copay, there was a line item with prepaid gratuities. The part of me that could do numbers woke up. I highlighted dates, added them, made little notes in margins like a teacher. I copied into a binder I picked up at Target because I had decided if I was going to survive my own life, it would be with office supplies. I took it to Mom's on a Tuesday. Snow had fallen in the way where the world looks expensive because everything is white. The stairs to her unit were slick. I gripped the rail like it owed me something. She opened the door with her lipstick a shade braver than usual. Paige was on the couch, legs folded, phone in hand. A live feed of her own face stared back at her. My sister has never met a camera she did not attempt to seduce. She set it down when she saw the binder. What's that? Paige said, like I was carrying a bomb. The truth, I said, and I felt stupid as soon as it left my mouth, like I'd rehearsed in a mirror. Mom flapped a hand. Don't be dramatic. I have dates, I said. I have tickets. I have charges. I slid the pages out like dealing cards. You asked me for money on these dates. You said you were in treatment. You were at sea. Prophylactic, Paige said quickly. It was for her health. Excuse me? I said. Her doctors said keep stress low. They said joy is good for healing. Paige said, we're supposed to sit in a chair and count pills while you call about bills? She needed to live. I paid $50,000, I said. Saying the number out loud made it sound ridiculous. A made-up sum, something a kid guesses at when asked how many jelly beans are in the jar. Mom didn't flinch. She looked at me like I was turning into someone else. I did have treatment, she said. You're pinning me down with rules. The plan changed. It was watchful waiting. The nodules, they were borderline is what he said, and I thought, well, I'm not going to live borderline. She pointed at the ocean on the brochure like it was evidence. Do you know what sitting on a deck at sunrise does? I felt energy. I felt me. You used the word chemo, I said. You called me crying.
I was scared, she said.
Chemo is a word people understand. You never understand me unless I'm bleeding. I told you how I was with a word that would get you here. Do you hear yourself? I said. My voice came out thin. Paige's eyes went hard. You want a refund for a life we were living? I want not have to choose between rent and your snorkeling, I said. Mom leaned forward like a cat turns before it sets. Don't you dare. Don't you dare make me small. I made you. I wiped you. I don't care if you're in a tight month or need to adjust. You're my daughter. I told myself I would not do the thing where I beg, but I'll do it here and now. Help me. No, I said, and it felt like I had unspooled a wire I didn't know was holding everything up. She blinked like I'd slapped her. What do you mean no? I mean no more money, I said softly because I wanted the no to be strong and not loud. No more transfers without proof. No more signing my name. No more. I'll bring you soup. I'll drive you to appointments if you want me there. I will sit with you when you need somebody. I will not bankroll your ocean. Paige stood up so fast the couch exhaled. She's right here, she said. Look at her. You think she's a villain? She's a woman who raised 2 kids alone, who made sure you had a piano teacher you didn't even appreciate because the sound reminded you of somebody else. This is not about the piano, I said, and I knew I'd lost that sentence the second it came out. You've always been the one who thinks you're better, because you keep lists, Paige said. Those lists never loved anyone. My binder sat on the coffee table between us like a person who couldn't keep its mouth shut. I closed it. My hands shook. There's a shaking that is anger, and there's a shaking that is grief. This was the second one. It made me feel hollow along the arms. I'm done, I said. I love you. I'm done. Mom's mouth opened and closed. She looked older all at once. Without the scaffolding of emergency, she seemed ordinary. And how do you love the ordinary when you've practiced loving the crisis? On the stairs, I clutched the binder to my chest like it would block falls.
It was snowing again.
The sky had decided to press down. Fallout is messy even when you do it kindly. I told myself I was practicing a new language. Boundaries. It sounded so simple in therapy podcasts. It felt like trying to write with my left hand. At first there were small explosions. Mom left me long voice messages that ran out their time slots. It's like, we did nothing for you. Thank you for showing me who you are. My favorite. I will put you in my will, and I will leave this world knowing I tried. Then later, when rage had cooled into a low simmer, these flowers were beautiful, honey. Paige bought them, but I know you picked blue, because you always pick blue. I couldn't tell if that was an olive branch or a needle. Paige took to social media. She didn't use my name. Crazy how some people want receipts for love, she posted, over a photo of her and Mom in matching robes in a hotel room. Comments were what comments always are, strangers with opinions, old friends trying to thread empathy through judgment. I screenshotted because I wasn't entirely the better person I wanted to be. I blocked Mom's number for 2 weeks. Then unblocked because what if? Tasha took me to a diner in Henrietta and slid a plate of pancakes across the table like medicine. Stop trying to be the person who holds the building up, she said. The building has contractors. My mother doesn't hire contractors, I said. She stares at things until they fix themselves. At school, A boy in headphones told me about his mom's new boyfriend, and his stomach hurt when he thought about it, and he couldn't say why. You can put your hands on your stomach and it doesn't change, he said, and I nodded because that felt like a poem and because kids are the bravest archaeologists I know. June got stronger. The immunoglobulin eventually did what it's supposed to do, and we celebrated small wins with bigger donuts. One night on the couch, she asked, "Are we okay?" And I said slowly, "We are okay." She held my face in both hands like she was promising something. There were also the practicalities. I met with a lawyer at the Volunteer Legal Services Project, Angela Delgado, hair in a bun too severe for her soft way of speaking. She explained what estate means and what it doesn't. If your mother dies with debts, the debts don't chase you, she said, looking over her glasses like an ant. If there's an estate, creditors can file claims. Without a promissory note, it may be hard to recoup what you've paid. Texts help, she added, because yes, we live in a world where screenshots are legal instruments. I'm not trying to put her away, I said. I'm trying to not be lit on fire. She smiled in that way where your face melts into someone else's empathy. Then step 1, protect your credit. Step 2, stop sending money. Step 3, document. I did. I left receipts like breadcrumbs for a future me who would need to know I hadn't imagined it. I sent Mom an email that said, "I love you. I will not be sending money anymore. If you need me for medical appointments, I can drive you if I'm able. If you need help with resources like social workers or assistance programs, I can help you research them." I hit send with my eyes closed because sometimes that helps. She replied 30 minutes later, "I have a daughter. Her name is Paige." 3 months later, Aubrey, one of my cousins I barely ever see, called while I was in the car line at school. "Your mom had a stroke," she said. The air went out like a tire. By the time I got to the hospital, Unity this time, Paige had posted a selfie in the parking lot, sunglasses, captioned "Family First." The ER smelled like antiseptic and old fear. They'd moved Mom to a neurological floor. When I walked in, her hair was flattened on one side in a way she would have hated to be seen. Her left hand lay open on the blanket, like a question she couldn't ask. Paige stood by the window, arms crossed. She didn't look at me. Aunt Linda had a styrofoam cup clutched in both hands like it was fragile, which is the only way to hold hot coffee that tastes like dishwater. Mom turned her head when I came in. Something in her eyes flickered that I recognized. Shame, or surprise, or that particular brand of hope that waits for the person you always turned to when your performance failed. She lifted her right hand, fingers trembling. I went to her side. "Hey," I said softly. "Hey, Mom." Her mouth moved in slow motion. Her right hand patted at the blanket until it found mine. She squeezed weakly. Everything I had been holding back for months, the binder, the debt that felt like a second job, dimmed like someone had turned the lights down, and all I could see was a girl who learned to perform to stay alive and a woman whose body had betrayed her. "I'm here," I said. "I'm here." We didn't talk about cruises. We didn't lay out documents like a bargain. Nobody is their best self in a hospital gown. There was a moment in the night when she woke and looked at me and her eyes filled with water she didn't let fall. "I didn't," she began, and then her mouth wouldn't finish. "You don't have to," I said. It was true and not both. She lasted 2 days. That second night, I slept in the chair that becomes a bed if you pull its bones out. A nurse named Joy touched my shoulder with that human weight I crave and asked if I wanted water, and I said yes because that's something you can say yes to at 2 in the morning when everything else is stuck. After she died, Paige moved like a general. She collected paperwork, asked for forms with signatures, organized a memorial service that smelled like lilies and deli meat, which is to say it smelled like every service I'd been to and none of them. People came and cried and hugged, and told me I looked like my mother in the eyes. The photo boards were a history curated by Paige, a series of dresses and hair days and smiles that included a surprisingly small number of me. A woman I didn't recognize hugged me and whispered, "She loved you so much." I nodded because I didn't have anything to give her in return except a promise not to make her feel awkward. Aunt Linda spoke at the microphone. She kept it short. Caroline loved attention and attention loved her, she said, and people laughed in the comfortable way where the laughter knows it is permission.
I didn't speak.
I stood by the coffee and poured cups for other people because sometimes service is how you get through. June clung to my side in a black dress she hated. Evan stood behind us like a guardrail, and when I wobbled, he pressed his flat palm between my shoulder blades for one breath. After the service, as we stood outside in the parking lot where the asphalt felt like it could suck you down if you let your knees imagine it long enough, Aunt Linda pressed an envelope into my hand. She kept everything, she said, rolling her eyes. Everything you want and don't want. Inside was a folder with cruise line printouts, deposit receipts with pages writing in the margins. You get the big bed. An email thread with a travel agent named Victoria where Mom wrote, "My oncologist says I should relax. This is more efficient financially than going to spa," and a little winky face. My own name appeared twice. In Do Not Disturb, "Mara is calling today," and in a note about keeping the story straight, which took my breath and put it somewhere else. 2 weeks after the funeral, I received a letter from an attorney representing the estate of Caroline Collins. There were not many assets: a 2012 Corolla, $2,200 in a checking account, a small savings bond in Paige's name, and a payable on death CD that Aunt Linda had co-owned that had matured. Mom had appointed Paige as executor. I made an appointment with Angela Delgado. "We can file a creditor's claim," she said. "Your proof is messy but real. The estate is small, so be prepared for both feelings. You might win the point and not the money." "I don't know if I want to win, or if I want someone to tell me I'm not crazy," I said. "Why not both?" she said, and she smiled. Paige's lawyer requested a meeting. We sat around a table at a small office with fake plants and the kind of art doctors' offices buy. I had my binder. Paige had gloss. Her lawyer had a pen that clicked like a metronome. "We're not disputing that Miss Collins asked for money," her lawyer said. "We're not disputing that Miss Collins used that money to live a life she considered healing." "She lied to me," I said. She said chemo. "I have texts," Paige said, pushing a stack across the table. In them, Mom said, "I'm sorry, and I'll pay you back, and once you're my favorite, don't tell Paige." It landed like a grenade. We all agreed not to pull the pin on. "We'll settle," Paige's lawyer said, because not speaking in circles was apparently against policy. "We can release the CD and half the checking account balance to you, and the vehicle if you want it." "The Corolla?" I said. It seemed funny and not. The check would be around $9,000. The car was held together by tape and someone's prayer I would mention. $10,000, Angela said for me. Standing inside a spine I didn't know I had. We settled for $7,500 and the car. The car backfired when you thought about leaving a stop. I sold it to a kid who needed to commute to MCC and promised him the CD player worked even if it didn't like certain bumps. I paid down my credit card. I put $2,000 in a thing I'd labeled emergency, as if that were a spell. I put the rest in an account and called it Italy. Italy wasn't smart. It wasn't the sort of thing you can defend on a budget spreadsheet. It was the word that had been inside me since I was 19 and took an art history class that made me want to cry in front of a fresco. It was the way I'd started saying someday like a talisman when what I meant was never. June and I applied for passports. At the post office, she smiled at the clerk like she was already in line for gelato. Tasha loaned us a guidebook with notes in the margins about places to sit that cost nothing and felt like something. Evan said, "Call me if it's too much," and I kissed his cheek in a way that wasn't romantic, but was deeply tender. Aunt Linda pressed $50 into June's hand, hard candy style, and said, "Eat something weird and think of me." We left in June. Rome was hot like it cheats. Rome was motorcycles and a priest scolding a tourist for bare shoulders and a little boy crying into a fountain because he dropped his coin wrong, and the kind of traffic that makes you feel like you'll die if you cross and then you cross and you live. We did the things you do. We stood inside the Pantheon and looked up at the Oculus while Rain tried to do math about how it falls. We ate gelato like we were taking medicine we liked too much. June told me every fountain had a best side. I watched her walk in sandals with legs that had learned to find their own strength and thought about needles and how the body is, as that resident said, a trickster we learn to trick back. One night in Trastevere, we sat under strings of lights, and I took a picture of June that made my heart feel prickly and bright. A man played violin, not very well. I drank a glass of wine that tasted like it had planned complicated things, and then decided to just be with itself. I did not check my phone for the whole meal. I did not render an invoice for the moment. We took a train to Florence. On the train, I wrote a letter into my phone. I didn't know I was writing until it finished. I cried without hiding it. June put her head on my shoulder and didn't ask why. We went to the Uffizi and stood too close to paintings, and I made my child look at tendons like they were arguments, and she rolled her eyes and said, "Weird, Mom likes necks." And I laughed the way you laugh when joy is something you made by showing up. In Sorrento, we took a bus that looked like a dare along a cliff that looked like a postcard trying to be outrageous. The ocean was bluer than any brochure had promised me. I thought about my mother on a ship deck somewhere and how she might have felt the wind and believed she could be someone else. On the last night, June and I walked down to the water. The stones were smooth from millions of years of being stepped on by women who were more tired than me. We sat with our shoes in our hands and let the dark do its work. "I miss her," June said, and because children don't say who, because they trust you to know, I knew she meant my mother and everything else that word had been. "Me too," I said. "Me too." The waves pushed little offerings onto the shore and then took them away. I adjusted our towels so they wouldn't get wet and realized happily that I could get new towels if I wanted to, if I needed to. I could do things that had no receipts. I could sit with my daughter and listen to the water and not think of money, except in the way where you are grateful to have enough of it to be there. The best thing about Italy was not the views. It was permission. Nobody knew me. I didn't know myself in the way I'd known myself back home. The daughter, the ledger, the body holding up the building. I was a person with a soft belly who cried over art and laughed at pigeons and said grazie wrong. I took Italy. I took it like a thing that was owed, the way my mother had taken money and ocean and told herself she deserved it. People in grief sometimes get to steal something back that grief took. I stole a country, or a season, or one corner of a map that made me want to keep living. I came home to Rochester, to my duplex and my stubborn hydrangea, and my job that is entirely about teaching kids to notice what they're feeling. At the first fall staff meeting, I stood up and told a room of teachers about a new program for students with chronic illness to keep up with their classmates, and Tasha sat in the front with her arms crossed and smiled like a prayer. Not that kind. The kind you say with your hands without expecting anything back. There are days where my chest goes tight, and I think about my mother's voice when she said I made everything about rules. There are days the binder sits on a shelf like a book I don't plan to reread. There are days I scroll to page and see a post about a juice cleanse and my finger hovers over the unfriend button and then drops because there's a way to let things be without letting them in. There are nights I wake up because the radiator makes a little clicking noise like someone has tapped me and needs to talk, and I sit in the blue light and count backward from 50 and say names in my head like they're beads. June, Tasha, Angela, Linda, Evan, Joy, the nurse with a hand. Names that built a bridge back when the building fell. When I think about my mother now, I picture her on a deck, sticky with salt, eyes closed against a wind that wasn't about to be reasonable. I picture her the night in the hospital when she held my hand and maybe tried to say I'm sorry, or maybe tried to say keep me, or maybe just tried to say you're my daughter. I picture her as the person who taught me the danger of stories that don't have numbers attached to them, and the one who taught me how to look good in a blouse because sometimes that's the only defense you have. I paid $50,000 and I learned the cost. I took Italy and I learned the price of something else, breath, which has never been free. Only worth it. Dear June, you were sleeping in the train seat when I wrote this. Your mouth was open the tiniest bit, and your fingers were sticky with clementine peel. Florence was rolling toward us in squares of sun and shadow. The woman across the aisle had a little dog that kept peeking out of her bag like it had a question to ask, but had agreed to wait until we got off. I wanted to put this in a place you could find later, a drawer or a folder that says, "This is what your mom meant when she said she was tired but happy." You asked me once if the hard parts of our family are my fault. That's the kind of question kids ask when adults have been a little bit loud with their feelings and the room feels like a balloon. The answer is no. The answer is the only thing any of us can do is change what we will carry. I carried too much for too long. I'm sorry for that. I'm proud of that, too, because it kept us warm for a while. Italy didn't fix anything that was broken. It gave us sun. It gave me a way to show you what joy feels like when you make it yourself and not out of other people's hands. It gave me a way to forgive myself for not fixing everyone, for choosing us, for saying no without saying never. When we get home, remind me to plant something in the yard that comes back every year without asking for a lot. Maybe lavender. Maybe something you pick and put in a glass we'll call a vase because the word vase is silly. Remind me to donate to the hospital fund in spring. Remind me to text Aunt Linda when I make her meatballs, even if they are a disaster. Remind me to drink water that tastes like tap and be grateful. Even then, tonight in Sorrento, you asked me if I will forget Grandma's laugh. I won't. You won't. You will remember the way it made a room lean toward her, and the way it made you feel like maybe you could be louder than you are. You will remember the hurt, too. Both can live in you. That is allowed. I love you in a way that made me cross an ocean not because we needed it, but because we could.
Mom.
What I learned. Boundaries aren't just saying no, they're saying yes to what matters. I thought protecting myself meant being mean. It turns out it means choosing how to spend the soft parts of me. Receipts over rumors is not cruel. It's how you keep your memory honest. People who tell you that asking for proof is unloving have learned how to live without accountability. That is not my lesson to learn. The smallest voices, my daughter asking, "Are we okay?" pull the truth out faster than any confrontation. I learned to listen to what the small voices in me were asking. Found family will slide pancakes across a table like they are medicine. Legal aid attorneys will explain the law like your aunt at Thanksgiving. Nurses named Joy will touch your shoulder at 2 in the morning. These are the people who build a bridge to the next day. Grief is not a payment plan. It doesn't clear when you hit a number. It's a tide. You brace, you float, you let it take a little and give a little, you come back to shore. You can place your palm on a cool wall in Florence and think about a person who lied to you and a person who loved you and know they are the same person and that the only way out is through. The ending is not a grand gesture. It's a stubborn hydrangea out back that comes back in June without asking. It's a kid with sticky fingers asleep on a train. It's a bank account with enough in it. It's finally booking the thing you thought you would only say out loud at parties. It's Italian sun on your face, and the feeling that this time, you paid for it with something you can live with.